shells you find on the beach are beautiful. They may be colourful or large or have an interesting shape, but there's a lot more to them than that. Have you ever looked at a shell and wondered where it came from or what used to live inside it? On North Ronaldsay, the sheep aren't the only interesting thing on the shore. Hi, my name is James. Today I'm going to be taking you through a number of common species whose shells I found on North Ronaldsy's beaches. I'm going to be talking about the animal that used to live inside them, how and where it lived its life, and showing you lots of photos and videos that I've taken over the last few weeks as I've scoured the shores. But first, some background. North Ronaldsay has a variety of shore types. We of course have lovely sandy beaches, but for the most part the coast is made up of rocky shore and loose shingle. Where the shoreline is made up of loose stone, not much life can grow due to how much the stones grind together with the tides. However, the rocky shore provides a lot of consistent habitat for a large variety of creatures. The intertidal zone is the area of shoreline between the high and low tide marks. At high tide it's covered in water, and at low tide it's dry or partly dry. The intertidal zone is rich in nutrients. The tide brings in plankton and dead plants and animals. However, any animal that lives here has to deal with the difficult conditions that come with it. They are exposed to all types of weather and temperature variation, and the constant barrage of waves coming in and out, plunging them underwater or leaving them out of water twice every day. The species that are best adapted to a certain point of the shore outcompete others, which often results in satisfyingly neat lines. The shelled animals that you typically find on the shoreline, that I'll be discussing in this video, are all mollusks, a group which includes everything from garden snails to octopuses. The intertidal mollusk species are well suited to this habitat due to a watertight, streamlined shell, and from there they have different adaptations that allow them to thrive in their specific section of the shore. Most are herbivores, feeding on algae on rocks as well as intertidal seaweed. Because seaweed species tend to be such reliable indicators of intertidal zones, if you know their preferred section of shore and a few common seaweed species, it's quite easy to go to pretty much any rocky shore and zero in on where you're likely to find each type of marine snail. Now, let's take a look at the species. Throughout this video, there is extra text on the screen for each species. Feel free to pause and read if you wish. Rough periwinkles are small, usually 1 to 1.25 centimeters high. The colour varies, usually red, orange or black, and are often striped. They have a well-defined spire, and even when small they are covered in grooves which give them a rough feel. Of the periwinkles that I'm discussing today, they are the most well adapted to exposure. They are often found in crevices on rocks at the top of the shore where the high tides reach. They have a number of adaptations to this high exposure. As well as of course having a shell, they also breathe air using the mantle cavity as a lung. Their eggs develop fully within the female until they hatch, and the young are released as active shelled miniature adults that can establish themselves on the shore. They can even estivate, which is basically like hibernation but for drought, if they get exposed in a particularly low tide on a hot day. In this higher position on the shore, there's plenty of lichen and algae on rocky surfaces for them to eat. Like other periwinkles, and every other herbivorous mollusk in this video, they feed by scraping their radula, kind of like a long ribbony tongue covered in thousands of teeth, against their food of choice, causing tiny bits of food to rasp off which they then swallow. The radula continuously grows in a mollusk's lifetime, and as teeth wear out, new ones move up to replace them. Common periwinkles look like typical snails, with a very rounded body. They're up to 3 centimeters high. These can be distinguished from rough periwinkles by generally being larger, but even small individuals have a more smooth angle at which this upper lip meets the main body. This angle is almost 90 degrees for rough periwinkles, as you can see. They are less adapted to life out of water than rough periwinkles, and are found lower down the shore, but have the largest range of all the periwinkles as they can survive all the way to shallow water as well as thriving in muddy estuaries. They are the only periwinkle species that can survive wholly submerged in water. When above water, the heavy shell protects it from damage and drying out. Unlike the rough periwinkle, they have gills but can also breathe air if their lung is kept moistened. They are considered a delicacy by many people, and are heavily collected in some areas, but are still widespread throughout Europe. Flat periwinkles are small shelled animals, up to 1 centimeters high, with a flattened and compressed shape. Here's a comparison between all the other periwinkles. They come in many different colours and probably inadvertently make up a good percentage of the nice shells one may pick up from the shore as a result. They live and feed on large brown seaweeds, almost always knotted wrack and bladderwrack. Brownish green individuals closely resemble the bladders of bladderwrack, and other colours blend in well with different coloured algae. Like common periwinkles, they have gills but are able to stay out of the water for a long time, in part due to the shelter and moisture provided in amongst the piles of seaweed. They're probably the most easily observable active species of the ones I'm covering in this video, and it's wonderful to zero in and watch an individual go about his business. They lay their eggs in masses on seaweeds which hatch as shelled young. Here you can see one of these egg masses with an adult. And here the size of one of the tiny young. Next, the Coleman limpet. Of course, everyone has seen these. They can be ridged and have a huge variation in size, from less than a centimetre to up to 7 centimetres in length. They're very well adapted to survive in the intertidal rocky seashore. Their conical shape offers the least resistance to waves rushing over, and they have a particularly powerful muscular foot that allows them to cling to the rock face. When fully clamped, they form a small vacuum in the centre of the shell, protecting them from the full might of the ocean, as well as any gulls or oyster catchers. To many people, they may just seem like inanimate objects that are part of the landscape, but when the tide comes in exactly the same way as land snails and other mollusks, they use their muscular foot to move and set off on feeding excursions. They feed by scraping algae off rocks with their radula. Each individual has their home spot to return to, and over time, their shells wear down the rock to form a scar. Next, the Bluray limpet. These little creatures are much smaller than common limpets. Named for the lines of electric blue running down their backs, the shells are very beautiful. However, they're very hard to find because of their small size. Live ones are equally hard to find. They can be found in the lower shore, down into deep water, feeding on laminaria kelp seaweeds such as oarweed. Each limpet grazes a deep groove, and though each one is small, together this may weaken the stem so much that the seaweed is torn free during stormy weather. Painted top shells are beautiful animals, up to 2.5 centimeters high and about as wide. The sides are very straight, which is a key identification feature. The live animals graze on rocks for algae and other detritus. Unlike other top shells, painted top shells prefer the rocky areas near to the low water mark. Also unlike other top shells, painted top shells lay their eggs in long jelly-like strings that produce miniatures of the adults. Like some of the other species I've shown so far, the empty shells of the painted top shell can be home to hermit crabs. I was lucky enough to come across this one at low tide while gathering footage for this video. Grey top shells are quite small shells, up to 1.5 centimeters high. They have lovely fine patterning on their shells, which sets it apart from other similar top shells. Like painted top shells, they are also grazers. They are typically found on rocks higher up the shore. They can often be found sheltering under rocks at low tide. One of the amazing things about mostly sedentary shelled animals is that other organisms are able to grow on the exterior of the shell. I found this individual that has lichen, sporovorous worms, and seaweed growing on it. This probably serves as good camouflage when still, though it made it stand out a lot when I saw it moving through the seaweed. Dogwalks are cool creatures. They can be 4 centimeters or more high, Their shells are usually white, but often with stripes of colour. They are very distinctive and easy to identify with practice. They can be told apart from common and rough winkles by the thickness of their shell and the prominent notch for the siphon to extend. In marine gastropods, the siphon is a soft fleshy tube-like structure that contains chemoreceptors which smell or taste the water to locate prey. Dogwalks are predators, eating barnacles, mussels and other mollusks. Unlike the radula of the vegetarian periwinkles, topshells and limpets, which they use for nibbling on algae, a dogwalk's radula is longer and thinner, with larger, more pronounced teeth. They use this radula to drill a hole in their prey's shell, and bind with a chemical substance to soften and dissolve the shell material. Once through the shell layer, they inject enzymes that break down the flesh inside, before sucking out the contents. It may take several days to eat prey this way. They lay their eggs under rocky ledges in small yellow capsules, some say resembling brown rice standing on end. Hundreds are produced, but only a dozen or so are fertilized, with the remainder used as a food source for the developing larvae. Next, the Commonwock. These are large mollusks, the largest sea snails in our waters. They're usually 8 to 10 centimeters long. They're carnivores, eating mainly mollusks as well as other scavengers, in a similar manner as the dogwalk. They are wily hunters and have been known to sit nearby and wait for an oyster or other bivalve to open its shell, then quickly insert the edge of its own shell in the gap before the oyster closes again, jamming it open and allowing the whelk to eat the contents freely. The shell is strikingly large, but live individuals are very hard to see except in very low tides in March and April. They are consumed by some fish, as well as collected commercially. Their egg cases wash up quite regularly on the shore though, and are colloquially known as sea wash balls. The Growty Buckie is well known in North Scotland and Orkney. It's actually two separate species, the spotted cowrie and the Arctic cowrie. The Arctic cowrie is smaller, lacks the 3 dark spots, and has a more northerly range than the spotted cowrie. Unlike almost all other shelled mollusks, their shell stops growing once they reach a certain size. Both are carnivorous, feeding on sea squirts, small marine filter feeders, using their long proboscis and radula, and they also lay their eggs in the sea squirt colonies. Growty buckies can be quite rare and hard to spot, and it's said to be good luck to find one. It's a tradition all around the UK, but particularly in the north coast of Scotland and Orkney, to go searching for them. Here's a collection lent to me by one of the island residents. It's been in their family for many years. A tip given to me by a resident was to look for the place on the shore with intact flat periwinkle shells. If you see those, you're probably in the right place to find a Growty buckie. Good luck! I hope this video has given you an insight into the lives of these animals, and perhaps will make you look a little bit more closely the next time you walk along the shoreline. There's so much to see if you just take the time to stop and observe. Finally, if you go searching for live creatures, be sure to put them back afterwards and return any rocks and seaweed to the way that you found them. Thanks for watching.